It was a Wednesday morning when the email arrived. Subject line, Private Dinner Invitation. The sender was Owen Halverson, the founder and CEO of Halverson Dynamics, a man whose time was usually reserved for shareholders and heads of state, not mid-level executives like me. I'd spent over a decade at the company, officially as Director of Systems Integration, though in practice I was the one keeping the entire digital backbone from collapsing. The invitation was for that evening. Rooftop restaurant. Downtown Seattle. One of those ultra-modern places where the tables looked like slabs of quartz and the wine cost more than a week's groceries. It felt strange. Out of place. I wasn't one of Owen's usual dinner guests. Still, I RSVP'd, half out of curiosity, half out of obligation. If I'm honest, a small part of me hoped it was a gesture of appreciation, maybe recognition for the quiet miracles I pulled off every week. Maybe a promotion. Maybe even just a simple thank you. It wasn't. My name is Jonah Wynn. I'm 45 years old, and for the past 11 years, I've been the invisible architect of Halverson Dynamics' most vital systems. When I joined, the company was on the verge of a tech meltdown. Outdated control modules, disconnected departments, security protocols so flimsy they might as well have been written in chalk. They were a billion-dollar company being held together by duct tape and hope. I came on as a contractor during what they called the crisis, a near-catastrophic telemetry failure that nearly grounded their biggest defense contract. I was supposed to fix a few bugs, clean up the mess, and move on. At the time, I was broke, fresh off a divorce, and sleeping on the futon in my cousin's spare room. Halverson offered a paycheck and a quiet place to bury myself in code. I said yes. 6 months turned into 6 years. One system led to another. I wrote code that kept satellites aligned, protocols that controlled factory-grade 3D printers with nanosecond precision, and a monitoring framework that could predict failures 3 days before they happened. People stopped asking if I could do something and just assumed I'd done it already. I never asked for recognition. I preferred the shadows. But deep down, I believed I'd earned my place. Until that dinner. Owen was already seated when I arrived. He wore a tailored navy blazer and the same serene, performative expression he used in quarterly video updates. He greeted me with a smile and gestured for me to sit. The waiter brought a decanter of wine I couldn't pronounce. For the first 20 minutes, we talked about nothing, weather, traffic, even a brief mention of a new drone contract. Then, without ceremony, he said the words. "We're going in a different direction." The world didn't spin. My stomach didn't drop. I just blinked. "Oh?" I said, forcing calm into my voice. "We've hired a new director of integration strategy. Tyson Halverson. My nephew." He paused, waiting for my reaction. I nodded once. "Stanford, right? I heard he graduated top of his class." Owen's shoulders relaxed slightly. He was expecting resistance, a protest. What he got was a polite smile and a sip of water. "These things happen," I said. "They do," he agreed, relieved. What he didn't realize was that I'd known this was coming for months. It began innocently enough. A weird spike in activity in our internal access logs. Someone had been inside my system documentation, files that weren't supposed to be open outside of scheduled audits. I traced the IP. Executive floor. I flagged it. Monitored it. Then it happened again. And again. Always the same time of night. Always poking into the bones of my work, my algorithms, my backup protocols, my proprietary integration models. Someone wasn't just reading, they were studying. 2 weeks later, I noticed that my admin privileges had quietly changed. Nothing overt, just little things. My access to the high-level diagnostic dashboards had been revoked. I was no longer looped into weekly risk assessments. My calendar began to empty. The Monday morning executive briefings I once led? Suddenly gone. At first, I told myself it was a restructuring. Companies evolve. Maybe they wanted me to focus on new systems. But then I heard whispers. One of the junior developers mentioned a new face shadowing IT leadership. A hotshot graduate name, Tyson. The final nail was Marin. She'd been on my team for years, a gifted systems architect with an eye for patterns. She stopped by my office late one evening, her expression uneasy. "I was invited to a meeting," she said. "A planning session. Normally you'd be the one running it. And? When they mentioned your name, Owen brushed past it. Changed the topic. That was all I needed to hear." That night, I sat alone in the server room long after everyone else had gone home. The hum of cooling fans and the soft blinking lights felt like old friends. This was my cathedral. I'd spent more time here than in any home. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the console, lines of code I'd written, diagnostics I'd configured, redundancies I'd designed by hand. Then the door creaked open. He stood there, smiling. Confident. Clean-cut and barely 30. "Tyson," I said without needing to ask. He nodded. "Just familiarizing myself with the layout." I gestured toward the Rex. "It's all there. I've read your documentation. It's thorough," he said. "But I've got a few ideas on modernization." "Of course you do." I smiled politely, said nothing. He looked around like he was already imagining his name on my door. After he left, I opened his profile in the admin console. Full access granted 3 weeks ago. He'd already read through everything. And that's when it clicked. They weren't firing me. They were absorbing me. Hollowing me out and installing someone else inside my skin. Tyson wasn't there to learn, he was there to replicate. The next morning, I texted Marin. "Stillhouse Cafe. 6:30 a.m. You in?" She replied instantly. "Always." I didn't have a plan yet. But I had time. I had knowledge. And most importantly, I had something they didn't understand. You can inherit a system. But if you don't know what makes it breathe, you're just pressing buttons in the dark. Stillhouse Cafe was barely open when I arrived the next morning. The smell of dark roast coffee mingled with the scent of old wood and rain-soaked coats. The city outside was waking slowly, the sidewalks damp from last night's drizzle. In the corner booth, Marin was already seated, hoodie up, a half-finished scone on the plate in front of her. She looked up as I slid into the seat across from her. No small talk. She was too smart for that. "They're replacing you," she said simply. I nodded. "And they think I don't know." She sipped her coffee. "What's the move?" "I'm not sure yet," I replied, though I was already forming something in the back of my mind. "But they think Tyson can just walk in and take what I built. They think because it's documented, it's theirs." "It's not?" "Not all of it," I said, leaning forward. "Some of the most critical pieces, the error prediction framework, the fault-tolerant synchronizer, the proprietary modules for legacy machine compatibility, I built those before Halverson. On my own time. My own code base." Her eyes widened. "You mean?" "I licensed it to them when I joined," I confirmed. "Temporarily. I never signed over ownership. There's a clause in my original agreement." "And you still have the originals?" I gave a slow smile. "Backups. Printed agreements. Old drives. Everything." After breakfast, I went home and dug through my storage closet. Old external hard drives. USB sticks. Folders stuffed with contracts. I found it all, clean documentation showing I'd developed what would become the core of Halverson's manufacturing integration system months before joining. Codebase time-stamped, signed, and validated. More importantly, I had something even more valuable, emails. Correspondence from my first year with the company. Owen himself asking me to integrate the system into Halverson's production infrastructure, explicitly stating that we'd formalize ownership later. He never followed up. I had given him my trust. Now it would protect me. Over the next few days, I played the role of the graceful ex. I attended meetings, answered Tyson's passive-aggressive questions, even pretended to take notes while he pitched improvements to systems he clearly didn't understand. The problem with prodigies like Tyson is they believe intelligence is interchangeable with wisdom. He understood theory, machine learning, optimization protocols, but he had never watched an entire production floor grind to a halt because a single sensor went offline. I had. And I'd fixed it before anyone in management even noticed. The internal team was starting to sense the shift too. Marin told me quietly that 2 other engineers had come to her with concerns. Tyson was meeting privately with team members, asking probing questions about systems I had designed. Not "how does this work?" questions. More like, "do you think this is over-engineered? Could it be simplified?" He wasn't learning. He was assessing, trying to find weak spots in my reputation. Marin was angry. "He's trying to discredit you. Piece by piece." I shrugged. "Let him try. The real systems don't live on a whiteboard." On Friday, I drove to a law office I hadn't visited in over a decade. Eric Weller, my old patent attorney. Semi-retired, sharp as ever. He looked up from his cluttered desk, eyebrows raised. "Jonah Wynn. Now there's a name I haven't seen since the Clinton years. What brings you crawling back?" "I need to file provisional patents." "Fast." He flipped open a notebook. "How fast?" "I want drafts by Monday. And I'm paying rush fees." He studied me for a second, then leaned back. "You building something? Or defending something?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That weekend, I worked through the night. Red-eyed, hoodie on, 3 screens glowing in the dark. I pulled my old source code from cold storage and rebuilt it line by line. Clean. Documented. Independent of Halverson's servers. Then I wrote a modular licensing shell, an elegant piece of code that would, in 8 days, quietly expire the company's right to use the software without a renewed agreement. No damage. No sabotage. Just a digital lock clicking shut until someone asked me for the key. Legally clean. Technically precise. Sunday night, I encrypted everything and moved the entire project to an off-site cloud server I controlled. Redundant backups in Switzerland and Iceland. Layers of security even Tyson wouldn't crack. When the clock struck midnight, I sat on my porch, whiskey in hand, and stared out at the fog rolling in from the sound. They'd spent months preparing to replace me. I had taken a single week to make myself irreplaceable. Monday morning, the company made the official announcement. All hands meeting. Owen on stage. Tyson beside him like a prince ascending to the throne. Jonah has been a vital part of our digital transformation, Owen said without looking at me. And we're grateful for his contributions during this exciting new chapter. Most of the team looked stunned. Tyson smiled at the right moments, said nothing. I gave a small nod to Marin. She nodded back. Message received. Later that afternoon, I requested a meeting with HR and Owen. I brought a folder. Inside, the original licensing agreement. Patent filings. The original system thread documentation with timestamps from 2 years before I joined. This system wasn't built during my time at Halverson, I told them. I brought it with me. And while I licensed it to the company, ownership was never transferred. It says so, right here. Diane from HR flipped through the documents, her expression tight. Owen looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. That was over 10 years ago, he said. And you never followed through to acquire full rights. The system has evolved, yes, but the foundation is mine. Every upgrade, every improvement. Built on my code. Diane cleared her throat. We'll need legal to review this. Of course, I said calmly. In the meantime, I'll continue transitioning Tyson. I stood, gathered my things, and left the room with the faintest smile. They wanted to replace me with a cheaper version of myself. Now, they'd have to pay me to use what they already took. By Tuesday morning, the atmosphere at Halverson Dynamics had shifted. Tyson was strutting through the corridors with the thinly veiled confidence of someone who believed they were finally in control. But below the surface, there were cracks, slight hiccups in the monitoring systems, unusual delays in the telemetry sync, and quiet questions from junior staff that no one seemed able to answer. I kept my head down. I showed up, attended meetings, handed over documentation. I answered Tyson's questions with polite professionalism, even when he barely hid his condescension. Do you think this error handling routine is over-engineered? He asked one morning in a planning session. I didn't look up from my notes. That routine caught and corrected a cascading failure during a prototype rocket test last year. But by all means, simplify it. Marin smirked behind her laptop. Tyson didn't respond. That afternoon, I received an email from HR, due to the progress of your transition, your final day has been moved up. This Friday. 2 weeks instead of 6. A slow knife turned fast. But I didn't mind. The shorter the leash, the easier it is to snap. The next step wasn't technical, it was tactical. That evening, I met with Darren Roth, an old friend from my days consulting for a cybersecurity firm in DC. We sat in the back booth of a dimly lit bar near the docks, the kind of place where no one asked questions. They cutting you loose? Darren asked as I slid a thumb drive across the table. Trying to, I said. They're also trying to claim ownership of something I built long before I stepped foot in that building. He inserted the drive into his rugged tablet, scanned the data. This is solid, he said. You have proof of authorship, early commits, even timestamped logs. But what's the play? They think they own it, I said. They're about to find out they don't. Darren leaned back. You want to go scorched earth? No, I said. I want leverage. That night, Darren did what he does best, deep digging. By Thursday morning, he had uncovered something critical. Halverson Dynamics was in acquisition talks. A massive one. TechWave Aerospace, a defense manufacturing conglomerate based in New York, was in late-stage negotiations to buy Halverson. The entire deal was contingent on a smooth digital transition and a modern infrastructure backbone, exactly the systems I had designed. Worse, the valuation documents, internal filings Darren somehow obtained, explicitly cited my integration platform, System Thread, as the linchpin of Halverson's technological evolution. "They're dressing up your work for the sale," Darren said. "And cashing out." He showed me another document. Owen had offloaded a significant portion of his shares 2 months ago. They were building their golden parachutes using my code as the ripcord. That day, I submitted the final draft of my transition documentation and attended Tyson's system briefing out of courtesy. He didn't invite me, I just showed up and leaned quietly against the wall. He was explaining a streamlined update to the production floor protocols, confidently scribbling boxes and arrows across a whiteboard. I cleared my throat. "And when do you plan to implement the fallback process during power loss?" Tyson blinked. "Our systems have enough redundancy now. A fallback's unnecessary." Maren raised her hand. "Actually, that fallback saved Line 7 during the voltage surge last quarter." Tyson's jaw clenched. "We'll reevaluate that." He moved on, but the room felt colder. My presence was a reminder that the system he was inheriting wasn't just code, it was culture, caution, and experience. And it was slipping out of his grasp. On Thursday evening, I sent a single command from my home office. "Initialize Secure Sync, License Protocol Alpha." Every system across the Halverson network received the silent instruction. Nothing broke. Nothing changed, yet. But a timer had started. Exactly 96 hours from now, system thread would require authentication from a licensed key, which only I controlled. The platform wouldn't crash. It would simply refuse to operate. No license. No production. Legally airtight. Morally justified. And poetic, in a way. Friday morning. My final day. I turned in my badge. HR offered me a severance package, a pat on the back, and a carefully worded NDA. I declined to sign anything new, thanked them for the opportunity, and walked out without ceremony. No one clapped. No one threw me a goodbye party. Good. Let the silence sting a little. By Saturday, I was unreachable. My phone on airplane mode. I spent the day driving up the coast, music loud, windows down, the ocean crashing against the cliffs just beyond the highway. I stopped at a small cabin I'd rented on a whim and watched the sky fade from gold to indigo. At 11:17 p.m., Darren sent me a one-line message. "Everything's in motion." I smiled. Let them wake up to it. Monday morning, 9 a.m. peak operations at Halverson Dynamics. System thread lit up error messages across every control interface. "License expired, please contact original developer to renew." By 9:12, 3 production floors halted. By 9:30, factory lines across the country reported total sync failure. At 9:46, my phone rang. "Owen." I answered on the third ring. "Jonah, what the hell did you do?" I sipped my coffee. "The license expired. You sabotaged us." "No. You installed software you never bought. Check the original agreement. Clause 12. Temporary non-transferable license, subject to renewal." Silence. "I've sent a new licensing agreement," I continued. "It includes compensation, recognition of authorship, and a non-disclosure agreement regarding the transition. This is blackmail. This is business." He didn't speak for 5 seconds. Then 10. "Finally, we'll get back to you. You've got until noon," I said, then ended the call. At 11:52 a.m., my lawyer received confirmation. Halverson agreed to the licensing terms. The payout was 7 figures. By 3 p.m., I received another call, this one from TechWave Aerospace. They'd heard about the incident and were interested in speaking to the original architect of the integration system that had held Halverson together. "Would you be open to a consulting role?" their VP asked. "Depends on the terms," I said. "We're prepared to offer double what you were making. Full remote. Creative control." I smiled. "I'm open to discussion." Halverson Dynamics staggered into Monday afternoon like a fighter taking punches he never saw coming. The silence that followed my license trigger was brief, then the calls started. Vendors, suppliers, internal teams, clients. All reporting the same issue: sync failures, system lockouts, and a total breakdown in operational continuity. System thread, my software, was the neural network of their entire infrastructure, and without the proper license handshake, it was refusing to process commands. By mid-afternoon, I got word through Maren that the executive floor had gone into crisis mode. Emergency meetings. Legal reviews. Owen yelling in his office. Tyson pacing the floor with a whiteboard marker and no clue what to do with it. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't even angry anymore. What I felt was something colder. Sharper. Validation. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment, screens off, lights dimmed. I didn't need to watch the fallout. I already knew the script. Tyson would scramble to reverse engineer my work. The team would attempt patches. Then someone, probably from legal, would finally read the original agreement I signed over a decade ago. Clause 12, licensing is granted on a non-transferable basis, renewable only at the discretion of the original developer. Use beyond the term without express consent constitutes breach of agreement. Clean. Simple. Legally binding. By Tuesday morning, Halverson Dynamics had accepted my terms. They paid the licensing fee, signed the NDA, and, most tellingly, scrubbed all mentions of Tyson's digital overhaul from their internal press briefings. The same boy genius who walked into my server room with a smirk was now quietly being excised from the company narrative. Wednesday brought the call from TechWave Aerospace, the conglomerate acquiring Halverson. Their VP of Systems Integration, Joanna Mercer, requested a meeting in person. She'd reviewed my licensing file and wanted to ensure there were no future surprises. We met in a private office on the 31st floor of a glass tower downtown. She was calm, professional, and refreshingly blunt. "We're moving ahead with the acquisition," she said, "but your software is central to Halverson's valuation. We'd prefer to have you on our side of the table." "What are you offering?" I asked. "Consulting lead. 3-year contract. Remote first. Full autonomy. And compensation? Double your previous salary. Stock options. Plus, we'll formalize ownership of any future IP you choose to integrate with our systems." "And Tyson?" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "He'll be pursuing other opportunities." I signed the contract that afternoon. Meanwhile, Halverson was cracking beneath the surface. Internal staff turnover increased by 30% within the first month of the acquisition announcement. 3 of the largest clients threatened to pull out if their contracts weren't reassured by my direct involvement. Tyson's changes to the production protocols had created bottlenecks. Processes that once took seconds were now lagging by minutes. And in a factory floor, minutes mean millions. I didn't lift a finger. Didn't gloat. Just forwarded the new contracts to my lawyer, followed up on pending patent applications, and quietly expanded my new role at TechWave. Then came the quiet message from Marin. "Tyson's out." No announcement. Just gone. I stared at the screen for a long time. A week later, I received a call from Owen himself. He didn't start with small talk. "You won," he said simply. I almost laughed. It was never about winning. Then what was it? I paused, chose my words carefully. It was about reminding people that the invisible foundations they build their empires on aren't free. He didn't respond. Just hung up. The next few weeks passed in a blur. My inbox exploded with consulting requests. Firms I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly eager to talk. I turned most of them down. The only team I was interested in building was my own. I reached out to Marin first. She didn't hesitate. "I'm in," she said. "Just tell me where to show up." Then I called Rick, the security engineer who'd covered my back during the 2017 breach. Then Layla from the database team. And finally, Louise, who had worked on early diagnostics testing with me before being shuffled into a back-end role under Tyson's leadership. Within a month, we had a fully formed consultancy unit, remote, lean, experienced. Not a hierarchy, but a partnership. We named it Threadline Systems. A nod to the software that started it all. One afternoon, while reviewing a systems integration proposal with TechWave's global logistics director, I received a LinkedIn notification. Tyson Halverson has updated his profile, freelance digital architect. Available for contract work. The corner of my mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Just recognition. The same way Halverson once tossed me aside, they had now tossed him. People like Owen always needed someone to blame when innovation came at a cost. They just picked the wrong ghost to replace. Months passed. My days became quieter, less adrenaline, more design. I worked from my lake house now, the one I'd always dreamed about. Mornings were for code. Afternoons for walks. Sometimes I even shut the laptop and just listened to the world breathe. One evening, I found myself back downtown, meeting with TechWave execs. I stopped at the restaurant Owen and I once dined in, the one where he fired me. He was there. Across the room, alone at a corner table, staring into a half-empty glass of scotch. Our eyes met. For a moment, he looked like he might turn away. Then he stood and walked over. "You still with TechWave?" he asked. I nodded. "Consulting now. Just enough to keep things interesting." He paused, then sat down across from me. He looked smaller now, like something had deflated behind his eyes. "I underestimated you." "No," I said. "You overestimated yourself." We sat in silence for a moment, the sound of silverware and soft jazz filling the space. "I built a lot of what we had," he said quietly. "So did I replied. He nodded, then pushed back his chair and stood. "Good luck, Jonah." "You too." He walked away. I watched him leave, the reflection of the city lights dancing across the restaurant windows. In the end, it wasn't about revenge. Or money. Or even respect. It was about clarity. About understanding that your worth is not defined by your job title or how many people clap when you leave. It's defined by what you build, and whether it lasts without you. And most of all, by whether you're willing to stand up when someone tries to take it without asking. Spring came early that year. At the cabin overlooking Lunarge Lake, the air smelled of thawing earth and pine. I'd spent the morning tending to the deck, repairing the railing, sealing gaps the winter had opened. It was the kind of slow, methodical work I used to loathe. Now, I found it grounding. Satisfying. My days had taken on a quiet rhythm, mornings filled with code reviews and consulting calls, afternoons for reading or hiking along the wooded trail behind the cabin, evenings by the fire with a tumbler of bourbon and the occasional pang from a team member. Threadline Systems had grown faster than any of us expected. What started as a fallback plan, just me, Marin, and a couple of laptops, had become something solid, steady, real. Within 3 months, we'd picked up 3 Fortune 500 clients and a dozen mid-sized firms, all looking for integration help that wouldn't crumble under pressure. And we gave them exactly that. Luis was the last to join. He called one evening from his car, parked outside what used to be our shared workplace. "They let me go," he said. "Told me the company was evolving past legacy architecture." I chuckled softly. "Let me guess, they didn't tell you what that meant until security walked you out?" He didn't laugh. "I feel like I built half that infrastructure." "You did," I said. "That's why I need you here." "Thought you'd never ask." By summer, Threadline had absorbed most of my old department. Not through poaching or scheming, we didn't need to. People came of their own will, some even offering to take pay cuts just to work somewhere they felt valued again. We didn't use titles. We didn't do daily stand-ups or meaningless metrics. We worked on trust and shared ownership. Our clients didn't care about our structure, they cared about results. And we delivered. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been replaced by someone with a better pedigree. A fresher degree. Flashier language. But you can't train experience. You can't download resilience. And you damn sure can't replicate loyalty. One afternoon, Marin joined me at the cabin. We sat on the porch, laptops open, surrounded by the hum of birds and the occasional splash of fish leaping near the dock. "I still think about it sometimes," she said. "How easily they tried to erase you." "They didn't try to erase me," I replied, "they tried to extract me." "Same difference." She closed her laptop, sipped her tea. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The chaos. The stress. That version of you?" I looked out over the lake. The water was calm, smooth like glass. "I miss building something that mattered," I said. "But I don't miss convincing people it matters." That fall, I gave my first keynote in over a decade, an industry summit in San Francisco. I wore jeans and a black button-down. No slides. No pitch deck. Just a story. I spoke about the difference between systems and solutions. About how good code is like a good bridge, it should stand long after the engineer is gone. But even more, I spoke about the invisible labor of loyalty. Of how some of the best work gets buried behind egos, ignored in reports, or signed away in the fine print. The audience didn't applaud right away. Not until I said, "The people who build the systems are often the first ones told they're replaceable. But systems don't care about job titles. They only care about who understands them deeply enough not to break them." A beat of silence. Then a standing ovation. Months passed. Owen was still at Halverson, barely. The acquisition had finalized, but his role was mostly ceremonial now. TechWave kept him on for PR, to smooth the transition, but everyone knew he wasn't making decisions. I heard through Joanna, my contact at TechWave, that his office had been moved to a less glamorous floor. No corner views. No weekly board calls. The empire he tried to protect by cutting me loose was now being run by the very person he'd underestimated. Funny how things turn out. Tyson, on the other hand, had vanished from the tech scene. His LinkedIn went dark. The last update was from 6 months ago, something vague about pursuing new ventures. Rumor had it he tried launching a startup using a modified version of my early framework. Didn't work. Crashed during beta. I wasn't surprised. He knew how to read code. But he didn't know how to live with it. To troubleshoot it in the middle of the night with 30 seconds to save a failing deployment. To sit in a cold server room with nothing but blinking lights and instinct. You don't learn that in a lab. You earn it. I didn't reach out to either of them. Not out of bitterness. Just peace. Some battles don't need a sequel. One evening, as the leaves began to turn, I hosted a dinner at the cabin. Marin, Luis, Layla, and a few new hires came up. We grilled fish. Told stories. Someone brought bourbon I couldn't pronounce, and Luis played guitar badly enough to be charming. Under a sky full of stars, I looked around at these people, friends, not just colleagues, and realized something that nearly stopped my breath. This was the team I was always meant to lead. Not because I controlled them. But because I trusted them. And they trusted me. Before everyone left the next day, Marin handed me a small package. Inside was a wooden plaque with engraved lettering. Built to last, in systems, in people, in purpose. I ran my fingers over the words. You think we've built something that lasts? I asked. She nodded. We're already standing proof. So no, I didn't win. It wasn't a game. It was a reclamation. Of purpose. Of ownership. Of the truth that what you create with care, grit, and honesty will always outlive the people who try to steal it. Let them have their titles, their corner offices, their press releases. I have something better. Legacy. One line of code at a time.